Welcome to Stuck, Time to Improv. I'm Mary Scott with Business Riff, and I want startups to be wildly successful. So today we've got Sherry Goldman from Goldman Communications Group. Yay! Welcome to the show, Sherry.
Hey, Mary. Nice to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Great. And we're going to talk about earned media. So Sherry, please tell us what that means.
Earned media, people might know it as publicity. It's that editorial coverage in all the media you see: print, newspapers, daily, weekly, broadcasts, news. It's when you're a guest on a talk show, radio, whether you're getting news coverage, or again, if you're a guest, online media. It's earned because you actually pitch the story. So you're not paying for it. It's not advertising where you're buying the space, but you're pitching the story that you hope the reporter, the producer, the talent will want to do to tell their audience. And as you know, Mary, it's a lot more credible than advertising, because advertising is you saying something about yourself.
Right.
But if you get earned media, then in essence, you've been pre-vetted. It's someone else saying something about you. And that credibility, their credibility, you're leveraging that. Suddenly you're elevating yourself from the pack.
Sounds good. So what kinds of tips do you have, particularly for startups who are they've got this great idea that's going to change the world and they're not sure how to get it out there?
Well, the thing about startups, and it's probably even more of a challenge for startups, but it is doable, is to make sure when you go to pitch your earned media, you're at a place that you have something tangible, number one, as versus just an idea. Mm-hmm. And then when you're pitching it, remember who the audience is for that media. So if it's a local newspaper, they're going to say, why do my readers care? How will my readers, if this will impact my readers? So make sure when you go to talk to them, you've targeted to them. Okay. And that could be something as simple as local newspapers would care because you're a local company. So they care about local entrepreneurs that start up there. Or perhaps you're doing something and you're doing a pilot program in that market. Then they would care about that. Or perhaps they're find a reporter or the producer that covers your space. So perhaps it's a lifestyle product. Then you're going to pitch the lifestyle editor and talk about how to use your product or your service so that their readers will care. In essence, the earned media is the middle person. So you're pitching the middleman.
So it really also has to do with doing some research in your own space to know who your market is and where they might hang out. Particularly social media, you've got different folks hanging out in different social media. Also, particularly St. Louis has this huge push to help startups in the diverse areas. For example, the St. Louis American is the Black newspaper that a lot of people forget that you can go get a story in that, particularly if you're improving something or you're a new Black startup business.
Absolutely. I mean, everybody wants to shoot for the biggest thing. Start with the weekly, start with the St. Louis American. They're more apt. And if you are a diverse owner, they're more apt to do that because it needs to be relevant. It needs to be in context. So that's important. Now, once you get that story, just don't let it wither away. That's when you repurpose it, right? Make it work for you. Post it on your social media. Put it on your website. Put it in an e-blast. Do it continually. Reporters love when you put that link and you're driving traffic to that site. So that's fabulous. But another thing startups should think about is everybody wants to write the story that I've just started my company. But put yourself in the context of something that you can be an authority on, because it's hard for reporters or even talk show hosts, whether you want to be on the 6 o'clock in the morning news or the local radio station that has some talk shows, to write about so-and-so started this company. But maybe they're an expert on something. Maybe there's something coming up. If you're environmental and you could target it around Earth Day, which was obviously in April, then they have a reason to maybe talk about you because you're timely. So perhaps you're a startup and you're doing something based for back to school, or you're doing something based upon fall and outdoors. Start pitching that now. Some media works on longer lead time. So figure out what your news hook, your context is. You could always look at the national events calendar and see if it's National Cupcake Day, and obviously if you make cupcakes, but find a reason for them to write about you. So make it timely, make it local. The more you can localize it, the more you can relate to their audience, the better. And the other thing I would say for startups, Mary, is, and I think so many people, even established companies, do this, don't overlook trade media, okay? It may not be as glamorous as being on the morning talk show, but if your audience, if your prospective customer is a B2B or an industry, or eventually you want to be B2C, but you need somebody to handle your distribution, someone to sell your product in retail, don't overlook that trade media, because that's the first step to have that awareness and get visibility in trade media. Then you start getting distribution, you start getting people taking your sales calls.
And the trade media is also a potential place for you to find strategic alliances to help move your business along. It's
Absolutely.
also, yeah, I was also thinking it's important to tell people your why. Why did you start this business? What problem was driving you nuts that probably drives other people nuts as well? And what is your unique solution to this problem?
From an earned media perspective, because that why is critical. From an earned media perspective, if you can then say, and here's an example of how we did it, have a case study, even if it's small, even if you did a pilot program, even if you did one client in a test, and you can talk about it, then that makes it more tangible. That makes it more real. That takes you as a startup out of the, I have a great idea, to you're a viable idea. You're a viable company. We should write about you.
Absolutely. So the latest earned media, I think, is podcasts. So do you have some tips for people on how to get on them or where to look for them?
Certainly, what we do is we have directories and everything, from a public relations standpoint. But you could start Googling podcasts and your thing. But again, when you pitch to be on a podcast, it's not, I started a company, but I started a company to solve this problem. Here's my 3 things that I learned. Here's my 3 tips that can help your audience. Always think about their audience, because whether it's a podcast, whether it's a newspaper, whether it's those reporters, those podcast hosts are thinking, why is my audience going to care? So always think that next step and tell them why their audience is going to care about your story, not because you have a good story, but how does your story, your product, your business help them? If you tell it to them, they're more apt to book you.
And remember, when you get your final words, that you put in a call to action. Either find me on my website, book a call, come see me the next time I'm talking, something. Have a call to action. You don't just put information out there and leave them hanging.
And that's a really good point. And I will say something before you start on earned media is make sure you have that visibility. So if you don't have a good website now and you don't have a social media presence beyond your kids, and their weekend barbecues or baseball games, make sure, because when you're pitching a reporter and they're like, should I write about them? They're going to check you out. They're going to see, is this a viable company or somebody who just has a great idea, but they're about a year or 2 away from being something I should write about? So make sure you've got that website. Make sure you've got some social media presence from your business perspective. Make sure you're tangible, because they're going to Google you and see if you're credible.
Well, this has been great. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
From Goldman Communications Group. We'll put information in the comments to how to get a hold of Sherry and find out more about earned media and tips for you to get your message out there. I'm Mary Scott with Business Riff. I want startups to be wildly successful. So join us again for Stuck, Time to Improv.